The lullaby, tinny and distorted, burrowed into my skull. It was a child's song, meant to soothe, but here it was a dirge, laced with a profound, cosmic sorrow. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, and with it came a torrent of sensations that weren't my own. I felt the bone-deep chill of isolation, the gnawing despair of endless days and nights bleeding into one. It was 1,000 tiny needles pricking at my mind, each one a memory of confinement, of being forgotten, of a hope that had long since withered and died. I gasped, clutching my head. This wasn't just a room. It was a psychic echo, a festering wound in reality. I could feel Dr. Vance's presence, not as a person, but as a force, a corrupted will that had twisted this place into a perpetual torment. The despair wasn't just around me. It was me, for a fleeting, terrifying moment. I was one of them, lost in the labyrinth of her failed ambition. My hands, trembling, fumbled along the back of the chair. It was just a chair, old and worn, but the air around it vibrated with an unnatural energy. My fingers brushed against something hard, a small, almost imperceptible seam in the wood. I pressed it, and a narrow compartment sprang open. Inside, nestled on faded velvet lining, was a single brittle note. My breath hitched as I unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, yet frantic, each stroke betraying a mind unraveling. It was from Dr. Eleanor Vance. They called me a visionary. It read, the ink bleeding slightly at the edges. They saw my methods as cruel, but they couldn't comprehend. I was unlocking the true potential of the human mind, pushing beyond the limitations of the flesh. I sought to free them, to elevate them, but I underestimated the darkness within myself, the obsession that blinded me. The final subject, he resisted. The process backfired. It didn't elevate him. It shattered him, and in doing so, it shattered the veil. Now the echoes remain. The despair is a prison, and I am trapped with them. This place, this room, it feeds on itself, on the lost souls. The door, it calls to those who seek answers, those who are drawn to the darkness. It is not a door to a room, but a door to their suffering. I tried to control it, to contain it, but I became its architect and its first prisoner. If anyone finds this, please, break the cycle. Release us. The lullaby, it is the anchor.
A psychique manifestation.
A trap. Dr. Vance hadn't just conducted experiments. She had woven a net of pure despair, powered by her own fractured psyche. The door wasn't a physical barrier. It was a lure, a psychic beacon drawing in the lost, the curious, the desperate, and trapping them in an endless replay of her failed ambition. The lullaby was the bait, the anchor that held the spectral prison in place. I looked at the archaic symbols on the wall, symbols I dismissed as mere decoration. They weren't just symbols. They were conduits, pathways for psychic energy. Dr. Vance's journal had spoken of disrupting the flow, of redirecting the current. Her own note, a desperate plea from beyond the grave, held the key. The lullaby was the anchor. Closing my eyes, I focused. I recalled the symbols Vance had used in her journal, the ones meant to contain and neutralize. I pictured them, not on the wall, but in my mind, weaving them into a pattern of release, of severance. I hummed a countermelody, a simple, pure note that felt like the antithesis of the despair that had permeated this place. I imagined the lullaby's hold weakening, its spectral strings fraying. I wasn't just trying to escape. I was trying to heal a wound that had festered for decades. For a long moment, nothing happened. The lullaby continued its haunting refrain, and the weight of despair still pressed on me. Then, slowly, subtly, the air began to shift. The oppressive presence that had been crushing me started to recede, like a tide going out. The whispers, which had been a cacophony of anguish, faded into a soft, almost inaudible sigh. The chilling cold that had seeped into my bones began to dissipate. And then silence. A profound, absolute silence that was more beautiful than any sound I had ever heard. The room felt still, empty but not in a terrifying way. It was the stillness of a storm having passed, of a fever finally broken. I opened my eyes. The worn leather chair sat innocuously in the center of the room. The dark compartment was closed, and there, to my left, was the door. It stood ajar, a sliver of dim, familiar hospital corridor visible through the gap. It wasn't sealed shut anymore. It was open. My legs felt like lead, but I moved. I pushed the door open further and stepped out of the room, back into the grimy, linoleum-floored corridor. The air here felt stale, mundane, blessedly normal. The hidden door clicked softly shut behind me, sealing away the echoes of Dr. Vance's ambition and her captive patients, leaving them to their well-earned peace. I didn't look back. I just walked, my janitorial cart a phantom limb I barely registered. The remaining hours of my shift passed in a blur of mindless cleaning. Each mop stroke, each wipe of a surface, felt like a deliberate act of reclaiming my own reality. Blackwood Creek Hospital was no longer just a job. It was a monument to a darkness I had glimpsed and, by some miracle, survived. As dawn began to paint the sky in bruised purples and grays, I saw Mr. Henderson standing by the main entrance, His usual gruff demeanor softened by the approaching light. He met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw something beyond his gruffness. A deep, ancient weariness, and a flicker of understanding. He didn't ask what I'd been doing. He just gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement that some doors were indeed best left unopened, and that I, Alex Mercer, had just walked through one and managed to walk back out. I collected my meager pay and walked out of Blackwood Creek that morning, knowing I'd never return. Some doors, once closed, should never be opened again. And some secrets, once uncovered, leave you forever changed.